slowing down so soon. She barely managed to take a breath as the mass in her mouth forced its way deeper in. Now it went right to her throat, the flaring head pushing against the back, determined to take what it wanted for itself. She gagged, struggling for air. This thing, it wasn't leaving anytime soon. There was no moving back either, as Double Diamond still had a hoof on her head, determined not to let it move. She spluttered, her saliva dripped around the floor and onto Dumble's hooves. Heart racing, she lapped at the length, plugging her airway as hard as possible. It wasn't just fantastic physically for Double. The feeling of Glimmer's drool helplessly sprayed around his hooves at his mercy for air. There was no need for the soft insides of her mouth or her desperate licks as her lips wrapped tightly around the base of his dick, begging. It was knowing that she knew what it was like to be broken like that. He let back a bit, and Glimmer collapsed to the floor, panting deep. Still no break there. Behind, she continued to ooze. Party Favour diligently stayed his course. Double was being rough there as punishment. His role was more to rehabilitate. This meant it was working, right? She was pooling from there, clear, sticky fluid, almost like a spring. It was getting harder and harder to ignore his own urges too. Maybe it was time. Hey, you mind giving me a bit of space? Yeah, sure thing, bro. I'm good here for now. Double had to be mindful for his new friend, of course. He was enjoying himself greatly here. Everything in Starlight's mouth was just perfect. He had to shift to something less so, that not all his juicy length could be service, but anything for a friend. Party positioned himself, then slowly lowered in his throbbing member into Starlight's blooming and welcoming pussy. Eager now and sopping wet, Starlight felt it. First, the tip of a pulsing hot head flared, making its way in. Her back legs kicked. Some semblance of struggle still left. Party wasn't secured so well. Though he was mounted on Starlight, he didn't have the same strength Double did, and almost lost his grip. Ever helpful as always, Double forced himself in again. That plug down her throat would teach her what not to do. Starlight, shivering as tears dripped down to join her spittle on the floor, submitted. There was nothing else for her to do. No longer the office of leader of the commune of equals. No longer a future leader in teaching the world her great philosophy. Just a piece of flesh for these two stallions to please themselves with, till she, too broke, and would join them willingly. She let out a sob. With that submission, Party Favour had better time. He eased his way in, feeling the walls inside spread in surrender to their intruder. They were wet, and while not eager, knew their place. Starlight Glimmer's body squirmed as she yelped, unable to do anything about the slow, deliberate violation of her purity, where she couldn't even see. Even though somewhat gentle, things weren't easy for Starlight. In the midst of the pain, there was a small bit of pleasure, but not enough to stop her from trying to yell if it were not for Double Diamond binding her down. Desperately, she tried to ease it in while she lay prone on the ground. She opened her hind legs wider, giving up all forms of resistance in hopes of making this as smooth as possible. Slowly, she felt the cock from behind retreat, only to thrust forward even harder. More tears dripped down to decorate her shame while she felt her behind tear. It was humiliating beyond anything. Her, broken, as an inferior instead of their leader, or even equal. With her mouth occupied, she couldn't even grit her teeth to help deal with the pain of her vagina forced further open with every one of Party Favor's slow, deliberate thrusts. Still, she dealt with it the best she could. She braced her front, willing her best for her hindquarters to relax and take what was coming. At the very least, the pain dissipating after long enough. With her pussy broken in, it wasn't so bad. Party never went too hard, keeping his momentum slow and steady, no matter how it felt like the hooves holding on to her butt wanted to seize control and go to town. She was losing herself to this. Her eyes rolled back, and her mouth began to hang loose. Though Double Diamond threatened punishment with his cock, inching closer to her throat, she was no longer able to react accordingly. Not so good for you anymore, dude? It's fine. It's been good enough for a long while. Why don't you come here and join me? You mean? Man, you're the best. It was strange to feel Party Favor's warm dick leave her and not return. Starlight just wanted to lay limp on the floor, but found herself being lifted by a strong pair of hooves. She was deposited straight on Party Favor, who lay on his back under her, his face right by hers. Holding Starlight securely with his forelegs, he gently eased his cock right back in the welcoming warm cave. Starlight let out a sigh. She would prefer to think it was of resignation, but it was undeniable that it felt good. With her insides accustomed to the big stallion members trying to make their home, at least there wouldn't be trouble. Behind, Double grinned. He had been waiting for this. Her pussy was taken by his friend, but there was another. With Starlight's back leg spread out and held open by Party Favors, she was wide open. Without warning, he planted his forehooves onto her, positioned his member right at the entrance of her butthole, and waited. Now that her mouth was free, he was going to enjoy everything that he had squeezed out. Starlight didn't notice at first, preoccupied by the dicking she was receiving in her primary hole. Wait, what are you? That was his cue. Throwing away all pretense of mercy, he forced himself right into her tight butt. No, not there. For Double, it was exquisite. Her anus seemed to try and suck him in, the insides like a vice around his dick as he pierced through. For Starlight, however, it was as if her ass was on fire. The burning pain of being sodomized so suddenly and brutally was barely offset by the pleasure she was receiving in her other hole. She tried to struggle in vain, but even if Double Diamond and Party Favor's combined strength wasn't enough to keep her down and hapless as a toy, there were still the chains. It hurts. Please stop. You didn't let out the ponies that begged from inside here, did you? Not until you had your fill, right? Same for us. Double Diamond let loose a laugh, took Starlight's mane in his mouth, and pulled. Her head was drawn back just as he thrust deeper into her ass, evoking a loud scream. Ah! Below her, Party Favor was no slouch. He was enjoying himself. He couldn't help but feel justified too, remembering how she wanted to have his friends imprisoned. Fortunately for him, he learned quite a bit during his night here with those visitors. But of course, that didn't absolve her in any way. He just had to focus on his own pleasure and let his friend do the rest of their work. Eagerly, he continued thrusting into her sopping cunt, holding her down tight as he listened to her cries and moans. A few of her tears dropped into his mouth. They tasted oddly pleasant. Above, Double Diamond continued having his way. He shut his eyes, savoring every squeal, every moan, every scream. Her tight, hot ass was really just icing on the cake as he secured his hooves on her ass and carried on pounding away. He pulled back her head whenever he wanted to do it particularly hard, ramming all the way inside to make her feel what she deserved. Then he would be gentle for a while, like he was going to relax. Give her a bit of a break. Then, just when he felt like she was becoming a little comfortable, he would penetrate all the way in again. He would let out a sigh whenever she made that scream. In the middle of them, Starlight kept trying to endure. Her ass was on fire. It was being split apart. She coughed and gagged in between her yelling, sandwiched between two strong stallions. She could do nothing but try to laugh. Anything to dampen it. Her legs were already open as far as possible, showing off her pussy and ass in the midst of violation. Any struggling was quickly quelled by the strength of the stallions, making her know her place. She did her best, focus on what felt good, closer to below, to do her best to separate herself from Double Diamond's stabbing. She couldn't really. She was now only their plaything. She wailed and screamed, begging for anything to save her, knowing full well it would only end once she had satisfied them both. At last, she felt her suffering coming to an end. The cocks in her quivered, then unleashed mighty gushes of hot, sticky fluids. Both stallions above and below her shuddered, then fell limp. They eased their cocks out of her abused holes, and she felt their cum leak out while all she did was lie trapped. She shut her eyes and hung her head, shame glowing through her tearful face. Some bonding, eh? Yeah! Anyway, I'll throw you a party today. I can get you a balloon ski. Really, man? That's cool. If you make one for yourself, I'll totally teach you how to ski. Thanks, buddy. Alright, remember, we're going to have to be back here the night after. Not until she's convinced we're right. I'm going home to hit the hay. Wanna have a sleepover party? Sounds cool, bro. Oh god. Thank you so much for listening. It's this story. Oh my god, this story. This is like woo-wee. I really hated having to make those noises. I mean, shit. Goddamn. Every time a story puts in those bits where it's like, it just, yeah. Well, anyway, I hope you enjoyed. Sorry that this has to be a two-parter, but, what can I do? Until next time, bye-bye.